Okay, let's dive right into it. Have you ever met someone who just seems, well, unbreakable?
Yeah, someone who looks like they're absolutely crushing it.
Exactly. Hitting every deadline, maybe volunteering for extra stuff, their calendar's just packed, and they seem completely on top of everything.
But maybe if you look a bit closer, or maybe if that person is actually you.
Right. There's this kind of quiet hum underneath it all.
Yeah, a constant pressure maybe, a sort of fear of dropping the ball, that feeling you can never really truly switch off.
It's a really common feeling, I think, but often hidden.
Very hidden. And that's what we're getting into today, this idea of high-functioning anxiety.
We've spent some time digging through the articles, the research, the notes you shared with us, really trying to unpack this paradox.
It really is a paradox, isn't it?
So our mission here in this deep dive
Yeah.
is to try and uncover the reality behind that, capable exterior.
What exactly is high-functioning anxiety? How does it actually show up? Sometimes in surprising ways.
And what are the hidden costs? The things people don't see. And
Yeah.
maybe most important,
How can you start to navigate it using the insights from all this material we looked at?
okay, so let's start with the basics then. High-functioning anxiety.
Mhm.
It's not technically a formal clinical diagnosis you'd find in, say, the DSM-5.
Right. The sources are very clear on that. It's not in the textbooks like generalized anxiety disorder or a panic disorder.
But that doesn't make it any less real, does it? Or less impactful for the person experiencing it.
Absolutely not. It's a term that's really gained traction because it describes such a specific, recognizable pattern. Well, it's individuals who experience pretty significant internal anxiety, worry, fear.
But on the outside.
On the outside, they are highly capable, often achieving, remarkable levels of success in their work, their lives, functioning at an astonishing level, as some sources put it.
That's the core paradox you mentioned, isn't it?
Exactly, because for many people, anxiety can be really debilitating. It can make even simple tasks feel overwhelming, impossible sometimes.
But for someone with this pattern, high-functioning anxiety, that internal stress doesn't necessarily stop them.
Often it actually drives them. It becomes this strange, uncomfortable sort of fuel.
Pushing them to achieve more, maybe work longer hours, stay constantly busy.
Yeah, it propels productivity rather than hindering it, which is what makes it so different from how we often think about anxiety.
And that drive, that outward success, is exactly why it's so often hidden.
Precisely. Because the behaviors associated with it, the hard work, the meticulous attention to detail, the high standards, the constant striving.
Society rewards those things. We praise them.
We do. They fit perfectly into what some of the materials call hustle culture.
So the person going through it, or even the people around them, they might just see ambition, diligence, success.
And completely miss that the engine driving it all is actually intense underlying anxiety.
Now, the material does note that someone showing these patterns might actually get diagnosed with something like generalized anxiety disorder, GAD.
Yes, clinically, that's often the case. But the value of using the term high-functioning anxiety is really in highlighting that specific difference.
The gap between the inside and the outside.
Exactly. The gap between that intense internal experience, the worry, the fear, and the outwardly successful, capable presentation, it emphasizes how anxiety gets channeled in this particular way.
So it's not just about having anxiety then. It's about this very specific way it shows up.
Right. This internal struggle that paradoxically fuels external achievement.
Okay, so if that description starts to ring a bell for anyone listening, how do you distinguish this pattern from just being, a really driven, successful person who maybe experiences normal stress?
That's a great question. The sources offer some really helpful indicators. It's probably best to think of them not as a rigid checklist, but more like different facets, different ways this internal pressure can surface.
Okay, where should we start? Maybe the psychological side.
Good idea. At its core, there's often this excessive worry. It's more than just worrying about a specific deadline or event.
It's more pervasive.
Yeah, it can feel like anxiety is just this constant low-level hum in the background, always finding something new to latch onto.
And that probably leads to overthinking things.
Definitely. Replaying conversations over and over in your head, analyzing every little nuance, worrying endlessly if you said or did the wrong thing.
That mental hamster wheel that's just so hard to get off.
Exactly. And often there's a significant fear of criticism.
How does that show up?
Even quite minor feedback can feel absolutely devastating. It can spark these deep fears that you're fundamentally inadequate or that people are going to realize you're not as capable as you seem.
Which sounds a lot like imposter syndrome.
It ties in directly. That feeling, despite all your accomplishments, that you're somehow a fraud, that you don't really deserve your success, and it's only a matter of time before you get found out.
I remember one source mentioned estimates that over 70% of executives experience that feeling at some point.
That's right. It shows just how common this is, especially among people who achieve a lot. It's not just you.
And with that fear of being found out, I guess there's often constant self-comparison too.
Yeah, always measuring yourself against others, feeling like you're falling short, not doing enough, or that somehow others are achieving things more easily than you are.
Okay, so those are some of the internal psychological signs. What about behaviors? How does this anxiety actually make people act?
Perfectionism is a classic one, a really big indicator.
But we often see perfectionism as a good thing, right? Striving for excellence.
True, but this is different. It's often a compulsive need for flawlessness, usually driven by that fear of failure or fear of criticism we just talked about.
So it's not healthy striving.
Not really. The sources give examples like losing sleep over a tiny typo in an email, or spending hours agonizing over some minor detail that probably no one else even noticed. It's excellence driven by anxiety, not by, say, a healthy desire to do well.
Okay. What else?
Often there's a strong need for control. This can look like difficulty delegating tasks.
Because you think, if I want it done right, I have to do it myself.
Exactly that. Or feeling really stressed, even panicked, when things are out of your direct control.
And I guess that links to overworking, taking on too much.
Absolutely. Putting excessive pressure on yourself. And crucially, finding it really hard to relax.
That inability to switch off we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that constant feeling of restlessness, feeling like you can't just sit still, there's always something more you should be doing, worrying something was missed.
I can see how excessive planning fits in there too. Making endless to-do lists, constantly checking schedules.
It's a coping mechanism, right? Trying to manage the internal anxiety by imposing order on the external world, trying to control the uncertainty.
A rigid routine could serve the same purpose.
Yes, providing a sense of predictability, which can then lead to feeling really irritable or anxious if that routine gets disrupted.
And there was another one mentioned, maybe seems small but significant, difficulty saying no.
That's a big one, actually. It can stem from a fear of disappointing people or feeling obligated to meet every single expectation.
Or worrying you'll be seen as not capable or not committed if you turn something down.
Precisely. It all feeds back into managing that underlying anxiety and fear of judgment.
And we shouldn't forget the physical side of this either. Anxiety isn't just in your head.
Not at all. It lives in the body. Chronic acute stress can become a daily reality for someone with HFA. Feeling intense pressure even in relatively normal, routine situations.
What kind of physical symptoms did the sources mention?
Things like excessive sweating, even when you're not physically exerting yourself. Tension, headaches, or migraines are really common, often linked to that constant internal bracing, holding tension.
Feeling lightheaded or dizzy sometimes.
Yes, that can be a physical manifestation too. And muscle tension is huge, perpetually tight shoulders, a stiff neck. It's like your body is physically holding on to all that stress.
And sleep. I imagine sleep suffers.
Almost invariably. Your mind just won't quiet down. Racing thoughts, mentally running through to-do lists, replaying conversations or scenarios from the day when all you want is to rest.
So it's important to remember, none of these signs in isolation automatically mean someone has high-functioning anxiety.
Exactly. The key, as the sources really emphasize, is the pattern. It's this collection of internal experiences, the worry, the fear, the overthinking, combined with these outward behaviors, all driven by that underlying anxiety.
And it's often hidden, because the external results, the achievements, the busyness look like success.
Right. Which leads us to the next crucial point, the hidden costs. Living with this constant internal engine of anxiety, well, it isn't sustainable.
There's a price to pay for keeping up that outward appearance of effortless success.
There really is. That relentless pursuit of perfection, that constant striving driven by fear, it creates this really damaging, vicious cycle.
High standards meet chronic stress.
And that's a direct path towards burnout. The sources describe burnout really clearly, a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion, just completely depleted from prolonged stress and overwork.
And people managing high-functioning anxiety are particularly vulnerable to that.
Incredibly susceptible, because they're essentially living in that state of chronic internal pressure day in, day out.
The term achievement anxiety seemed to capture that really well, too.
Yes, being driven to overachieve by your anxiety, which paradoxically just feeds more fear, more self-doubt, and ultimately leads to that exhaustion and burnout. It's highlighted as being really common among high performers.
It was quite eye-opening to see some of the names mentioned in the sources, people who've spoken about similar struggles.
Yeah, figures like Bella Hadid, Michelle Obama, Maya Angelou, Tom Hanks, even Albert Einstein.
Wow, people we think of as being at the absolute pinnacle of achievement.
Exactly. It shows that this internal turmoil isn't about lack of actual success. Einstein himself reportedly talked about the exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held, which really resonates with that imposter syndrome feeling, doesn't it?
It really does. It points towards what one source called the success paradox.
Explain that a bit more.
The idea that the more you achieve, the higher the bar seems to get set, almost automatically. Milestones don't bring lasting satisfaction or relief,
They just become the new baseline, the new standard you have to meet or exceed.
creating this perpetual pressure, like being stuck on a hedonic treadmill of achievement.
Where true fulfillment, that sense of contentment, just feels constantly out of reach no matter how much you accomplish.
And the costs of being stuck on that treadmill are pretty significant, aren't they?
Absolutely. There's profound emotional exhaustion. That constant striving leaves very little mental or emotional space for genuine reflection or simply experiencing joy.
And a fear of stagnation.
Yes, the anxiety-driven need for the next accomplishment, the next goal, often overshadows any satisfaction you might feel from past successes. You can't rest on your laurels because the anxiety won't let you.
How does it impact relationships?
They often suffer significantly. Work and goals can consume all your focus and energy, leading to emotional withdrawal from loved ones. Or it can create tension and conflict, especially if partners or family don't understand the intense internal pressure cooker.
It can affect decision-making, too, I imagine.
Definitely. It can make people overly cautious, incredibly risk-averse, driven by that fear of making a mistake that could jeopardize everything they've built.
And then there are the broader mental health consequences.
Yes, the chronic stress takes a toll on physical health over time. Burnout is a major risk, and there's an increased likelihood of developing depression alongside the anxiety.
The sources also briefly touched on how our wider culture plays into this.
Right, the societal emphasis on hustle culture, the constant pressure to appear successful, productive, always on, it contributes to and reinforces this environment where HFA can thrive.
Okay, so listening to all that, it can sound pretty intense, maybe even a bit bleak.
It can feel that way when you're in it, for sure. But the really good news is, the material we looked at also offers very concrete, practical ways to start navigating this pattern. It's not a life sentence.
And the very first step, maybe the most crucial one,
Is awareness. Simple, but powerful.
just recognizing the anxiety when it shows up.
Yes. And importantly, starting to identify what it's urging you to do. What are those fear-driven impulses it creates?
How does that help?
Well, awareness essentially creates a pause button. It gives you a moment of space between the anxious feeling or thought and your reaction to it.
So you don't automatically have to act on the anxiety.
Exactly. It allows you to see the anxiety for what it is, a feeling, a set of thoughts, maybe uncomfortable, but not necessarily the absolute truth or an immediate command. And with that awareness, you can start to choose behaviors that are actually aligned with your deeper values, not just automatically reacting out of fear.
Okay, so awareness first. What else? Mindfulness and relaxation techniques came up a lot.
They did. They're consistently highlighted as really powerful tools here. They help build that self-awareness muscle we just talked about.
And they help manage the stress directly.
Yes, they improve your ability to regulate emotions, reduce the physical and mental symptoms of stress, and can even improve focus by grounding you in the present moment, rather than being lost in future worries or past replays.
What kind of techniques are we talking about?
Things that are actually quite simple and accessible, like mindful breathing, just focusing on the sensation of your breath. Body scans, where you bring awareness to different parts of your body and notice any tension. Even mindful eating, really savoring your food. Guided meditations can be great too.
It's about integrating small moments of calm and presence into the day.
Exactly. Making relaxation and mindfulness part of your routine, treating them as non-negotiable self-care, not just something you do if you have spare time, which, let's face it, people with HFA rarely feel they have.
Right. What about tackling the thought patterns themselves? Cognitive strategies were mentioned, often from CBT.
Yes. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, approaches are incredibly effective for this. CBT fundamentally helps you identify and then challenge those negative, anxious thought patterns that fuel the whole cycle.
So first you have to notice the thoughts.
Precisely. Learn to recognize those irrational or distorted thoughts when they pop up. Things like catastrophizing, where your mind automatically jumps to the absolute worst possible conclusion in any situation.
And once you notice them,
Then you actively engage in what's called cognitive restructuring. This is where you start questioning the evidence for those anxious thoughts. Are they really true? Are there other, less catastrophic explanations?
looking for more realistic outcomes instead of just buying into the fear.
Exactly. It's like training your brain to see things more clearly, less filtered through that lens of anxiety, challenging the assumptions that anxiety makes automatically.
Setting boundaries and realistic goals also seemed really important.
Absolutely vital. This involves learning that it's not just okay, but actually necessary to say no sometimes.
Setting boundaries at work, but also in your personal life.
Yes, protecting your time and energy prevents you from constantly overextending yourself, which is a huge driver of burnout for people with HFA.
And making sure goals are realistic.
Yes, and making sure they truly reflect your values and what's important to you, rather than being dictated by anxiety, perfectionism, or comparing yourself to others. Breaking down big, overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable steps helps too.
Self-compassion and self-care came through strongly as well. These feel like the antidote to that harsh inner critic.
They really are. Practicing self-compassion means consciously choosing to be kind to yourself, especially when you make mistakes or feel like you're falling short.
Accepting that you're human,
It just-
basically.
Exactly. Accepting that it's okay not to be perfect all the time. This directly counters that relentless internal pressure.
And self-care. It's not just bubble baths, right?
Definitely not, although those can be nice too. It's foundational. Ensuring you get enough sleep, which is often disrupted by anxiety. Eating well. Getting regular exercise, which is a great anxiety reliever.
And making time for things you genuinely enjoy.
Yes, deliberately scheduling activities or hobbies that bring you joy, relaxation, or a sense of accomplishment outside of work. One source even used the term radical self-care for those really locked in the overachieving stress cycle, suggesting significant shifts might be needed.
Avoiding the comparison trap is part of this too.
Crucial. Actively working to avoid comparing yourself to others, especially the curated, often unrealistic images we see on social media. Focusing on your own journey, your own goals, your own values.
And finally, what about getting help from others?
Seeking support is presented as a sign of strength, definitely not weakness. Simply talking openly about how you're feeling with trusted friends or family can provide immense relief and valuable perspective.
And professional help.
Highly recommended. A therapist or counselor can provide structured tools and support that can help you process complex feelings, develop personalized coping strategies tailored to your specific triggers and patterns.
And really help challenge those deep-seated thought patterns we talked about.
Yes, they're skilled in techniques like CBT, which, as we mentioned, is specifically noted as being very effective for managing this kind of anxiety.
And remembering to delegate came up too.
Right, sharing responsibilities, whether at work or home, that's also a form of seeking support, recognizing you don't have to carry the entire weight of the world alone.
It sounds like managing this is definitely a journey, not a quick fix.
Absolutely. Change takes time, consistent effort, and practice. The key is to be patient and gentle with yourself, celebrating the small steps forward, not aiming for immediate perfection and recovery either.
Okay, so let's try and circle back then, bring it together. High-functioning anxiety. It's essentially that quiet but incredibly powerful internal engine.
Right, an engine driving external success, but fueled primarily by worry, fear, and that relentless pressure to perform.
Recognizing the signs, those subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways it shows up in your thoughts, your behaviors, even your physical body, that's the essential first step.
And understanding the very real hidden costs, the burnout, the strain on relationships, the impact on your overall well-being that provides the motivation, the why, for making changes.
And the encouraging part is that the material clearly shows there are concrete strategies available. It's not hopeless.
Not at all. From building awareness and using mindfulness to applying cognitive techniques to challenge thoughts, setting firm boundaries, practicing genuine self-compassion, and reaching out for professional support when needed.
You don't have to feel like you're stuck relentlessly pedaling that bike uphill forever with no end actually in sight. There are ways to change the ride.
Well put. There really are.
So maybe as we leave this deep dive, a final thought for you listening. it might be worth sitting with. How your own deeply ingrained definition of success could actually be contributing to your anxiety.
That's powerful. And maybe asking yourself, what would it truly feel like to redefine having it all? To make sure that definition includes internal peace and well-being, not just external achievements.